All right, good morning. Today is day 60. We are officially, after today, 75% of the way done with the class. Um, just a quick reminder, again, your chapters 8 through 11 homework will be due a week from Sunday. And again, there is no class tomorrow due to the Good Friday observance, so I will not be online tomorrow morning. In fact, I'm babysitting my granddaughter. All right, so let's get started. I said yesterday that what we are going to do today is basically threefold. And that is the first thing we're going to do is to go over some of these exercises I botched yesterday. So we're going to go over a couple for chapter 9 and one for chapter 10. After we get done with that, we're going to um, I will lecture on chapter 11, and I want to talk about the jQuery plugin registry and the jQuery UI. And then after that, we will do a problem from chapter 11. Now, as far as the problem for chapter 11, it's an extension of the one from chapter 10. So just so you know that. All right. I will tell you too, I went back and looked at these exercises yesterday. I like the Murach book. I don't like the way they do jQuery. Sometimes I think that it can be confusing when they give you something and they go, here's something, it works, but we want you to make it work in a different way. And this is just me speaking. I think personally that can be confusing at times. So as they say right there, we're going to modify another image swap application so it uses effects to to both display and hide images. So again, right now, this application does work, but they want you to make it work in a different way. All right. So if I bring this up here and we bring up the HTML file as well, and I run it, as I mentioned before, it does work. So in other words, we can click on each one of these and it changes exactly as it's supposed to, but they don't want it to change, for lack of better words, exactly like it's changing right now. So let's go in and take a look in here at this image swap.js because there's only a few lines in here that we have to change. All right, I'm taking for granted that by now you understand what this means and you understand what this means. All right. We've done a little bit of work where we've talked about preloading images before. So that's not exactly a new topic. But again, the reason for preloading images is especially if you've got a site that has a lot of intricate images, it'll take a little bit longer when the site first loads. But as a person traverses their way through the site, it'll actually go much faster. All right. And that's the rationale behind that. So we're preloading here, and I don't think there's anything here that has to change. All right. Then we set up, we set up these event handlers here. All right. So again, we've got this click event. We've got a const. Remember, so what this is saying is if we click basically on any of the images, we're passing the event and that link is going to become our current target. The reason that's important is, again, we're switching here. All right, so we're switching from one image to another image. All right, so let's see. What do we want to do here? The link will equal the event target. That's fine. The image URL will equal the link. That looks okay. And let's see. For now, I'm going to comment out this line and I'm going to comment out this line. So I want to keep the link here. The image URL is going to be equal to link attr href. That's correct. This will be equal to the caption is going to be equal to the title. All right, that looks good as well. All right, so there's a couple things that we want to do then next. All right, and that is what we want to do is remember what we're doing here is we're selecting a new image. Then we're setting the image URL to that new image right here. And we're setting the caption to the caption for the new image. All right, we have an existing image that we want to be able to fade out so we can fade the other one in, for lack of better words. All right, so if I have to, I'll bring these back again, but I'm literally just going to remove this and move this over. And I'm going to do the same thing here. All right, and then I can move that up. All right, so now that I do that, then basically this is where I'll want to do the switch. So I'm going to come in here. They want you to fade that out over a second with both the caption and with the image. Now, in here, what we want to do, though, is more than this. When this is done, we want to call a callback. So in other words, we want to call something here, but we don't want what we're about to call right here. We don't want this to run until those two things have actually faded out. All right. And I think I mentioned this before. In fact, I'm sure I did, but I'm going to say it again anyway. And that is, this is a lot of the different work that you're going to be doing when you take the AWD1111 class. The main difference in here is you're going to be working a lot basically with HTTP requests and HTTP responses. So quite often in here, you're going to have REQ and RES for request and response. And if you say, I don't get it, you don't have to right now. I'm just telling you that this kind of syntax isn't about to go away. All right. And they are using the semicolons here. So I will put one at the end here. And let's see, so that'll bring in the new caption. And we have to bring in the new image as well. I think that was called URL, didn't we? Yep. And then we've got our prevent default, setting our focus. I think that's it. But before we go over it, let's save this. I'm going to go back and run it and see if we've got any notable effect in here, notable difference when we run it. Well, that sure isn't what I was expecting. Yeah, because all that's doing is, well, could I have missed something? Of course I could have. Let's take a quick look in here. All right, because I had it working before. So let's see. That's all good. Handlers, target, that's correct. 1000. Image, fade out 1000. Caption text. Well, that would help, right? If I spell that correctly, I suppose that would help. Let's see what that does as far as changing it. Not a flippin' thing. Oh, my goodness. I don't think I had to change anything in here in the HTML. Let's take a quick look, but I don't believe so. Now, as always, if I can't get it to work, I'm sure as heck not going to ask you to do it. It's fine. They're using the slim in here. I don't know if that's going to matter or not, because when I did it, I used the minified version. Go jquery.com, jquery 341. So I used that. I don't think that would matter though. Evidently it does. Okay. Okay. Now I'm not sure exactly how different it looks from the way it did before. All right. But let's go back and take a quick look. So in here, in your index.html file, change that, remove the slim. And what the slim has in it, it's not what it has, it's what it doesn't have. All right. And evidently there is something in that slim, all right, that has been removed that is in the regular min.js that you need. So make sure you change your line to this. And actually the newest is 3.4.6, but you can use the one they have here. It won't hurt anything at all. So change that line and save. And then let's go back into the image swap here. And again, as already mentioned, we changed nothing at all through right here. All right, except I got rid of those lines after this. We just want to set this stuff up. After we've set it up, we're trying to fade out here the previous caption and image, and then fade in the new one. All of that over a 1 second interval. Other than that, nothing in here changed. All right. I was hoping that by today I would have your pretest done, and I don't, because I have found in the past this is the hardest topic to test on. All right, because it's so intricate. You can write a test that's unbelievably simple, and by not changing that much, you can make it unbelievably hard. All right, so I'm going to go back and I want to go through. Evan has supposedly saved some of his old tests. I may use one of his. I may modify and use his. I don't know yet exactly what I'm going to do. All right, so that's the first one. Hopefully that made at least a little bit of sense. So let's close this. And the next one that we were doing was here, and it was this debugging a slideshow application. So let's bring that one up next. Right. So again, let's start by running it and seeing what it looks like. Oh, this was that fun one from yesterday. Okay. So as of right now, I believe it may be skipping. Yeah, it looks like it is skipping some of the slides. We talked about this yesterday. All right. So let's go in and take a look. Let's start as we just did, or maybe should have done before. Let's start by going in and taking a look at the HTML that's in here. All right. So let's see, where am I? There we go. All right. So they've got this phishing slideshow. All right. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like we've got five different slides that are in here which have alt tags, and we're using the regular min, not the slim min. Don't think right now looking at that we're going to have to change anything. So let's take a look in here and see what it looks like. At least we have to do in here to make it work. All right. All right. So taking it from the top again, we've got our use strict and our document ready. We are creating an array of slide images. And we talked about this yesterday. We can call this anything we want. They just happen to call it image cache. All right. So we are looping here. Remember, the dot each is the way that you loop inside of jQuery. So const image equal new image. So for each one of these images, we're basically putting them into the array right here. And for each image, we're setting its source attribute and its alt attribute. And then finally, we are adding it to the array itself. All right. I don't think anything in there has to change. So let's take a look in here right now. All right. Interval. All right. Right now, we're doing a caption slide fade out. All right. And we're trying to combine those here. I don't know if it's going to matter that we're trying to combine these, but I'm going to take this line right here. You're going to see what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to break it up into 2 lines. Doing a caption dot fade out. Do that over 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second. All right. And then we're going to do the other one. So I'm going to do the slide here. With, and again, we're image counter plus 1. Cast length, const next image. That's the only thing I'm changing. All right. And I'm going to come back here. And if this doesn't work, it'll be fun to. And I believe now that it is working. So let's double check. So I'm going to stop this. In fact, I'll just let it keep running. It's not going to hurt anything. But I'm going to bring up these slides like I did this yesterday too. So I'm going to bring up the images. All right. I'm going to cut down the size of this like that. And then I want to do the same thing to what I've got running here. All right, so you can see if we're in the right order now. So we've got that. As soon as this starts, I'm going to come over to here. All right, so let's see if they are now in the correct order. So there's 1. There's 2. Oh, looks like we're still missing something. So what we did, I'm going to go back and check everything right now. But what we did is we are coming through here. In fact, the best way to test this is not the way that I just showed you, and that is this. What we should be doing, okay, I've got that here, and in our code, let's see. So in our code here, what do we have again? We've got casting 1, 2, casting 1 and 2, catch, release, fish, and lures. Casting 1, casting 2, fish, release, and lures. So in other words, we don't have all of them in here right now. All right. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to try to implement all of these in here. Hopefully what I'm saying is making at least a little bit of sense to you. All right. So we've got those right now. And what we want, so right now we've got images casting 1, images casting 2, but we need the images casting 3. So I'm going to add that like this. I'm just making this up. So we now have casting 3 in there. So I've got casting 1, casting 2, casting 3, catch, release, fish. We need fish 1, and then lures. So we'll make that fish 1, and I'll make that on the North Fork. All right. So we'll see if we get now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things. So I'm going to do a file, save all here. And I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to restart it because it wouldn't work otherwise. So let's see if we get 7 different ones in here. They should now say Middle Kings. Okay, that's 3, 4, 5. The next one should say North Fork, 6, 7. All right, so the whole thing is working. So in order to get this one to work, there were 2 things that we had to do. All right, and again, I'm not sure why they're giving you a problem to do like this one. And I think, Grant, you mentioned this yesterday, that you only had 5, or we all had 5 of the slides in here. So I came in and added this one. All right, and I also added this one. Okay, if you do that, you get all 7 of the slides that they're showing. All right, and the only other thing that had to be changed in here was this was broken up into 2 lines. Other than that, it at least appears as though everything that's in there now works the way that they asked it to work. All right, and like I said, I am going to take some time either tonight. I'd like to do it tonight so I don't have to worry about doing it this weekend. And I would like to go in and write a pretest and send it out to you guys tomorrow so you can take a look at it. All right. Okay. I went back and I was rereading the chapter 11. And even on that, I mean, to me, asking you to go in, for example, asking you to go in and create your own plugin would be ridiculous. All right. And what I mean is, it's not that I don't think that a lot of you couldn't do it, but to me, considering we spent a week on this, that's asking a whole heck of a lot from you. All right. Okay. Now, the next one was reservation. And that is that in this one. There we go. So in this exercise, you'll use JavaScript to validate a reservation request. So as you can see in here, this will have to be a date. That'll have to be a number. Here, pretty self-evident what it is. And our room type, we'll have to choose one of these. Our bed type, we'll want to choose one of these. We've got a checkbox in here. All right, and we've got contact information. It's pretty much what we've looked at previously. All right, so it says open the application. I already have, run it. Click the submit request button to see the page that's displayed when the form is submitted to the server. Now, that's kind of important. What I mean by that is if I bring this one up now, and let's just bring up the index page, and we'll bring up the reservation.js page, okay? If I bring this one up and run it, and I put absolutely nothing in here, there's nothing in there, and I click submit, all right? You'll notice if we look up here in our query string, nothing has been added. However, it didn't give us any error messages because as of right now, we're not actually doing any validation. So of course, that's what we're going to have to add in just a moment. But I want to run through this quickly. So in the JavaScript file, note that the ready event handler contains the declaration for a constant named email pattern that contains the pattern that will need to be used to validate the email address. Okay. Code a statement that moves the focus to the arrival date. So when we start, and this is the big thing in here, is this one. So as it says, code an event handler for the submit event of the form. It should validate all of the user entries. If any of them are invalid, it should cancel the submission. So an evt.prevent default, and they show 4 validations in there. A value must be entered into each text box. The number of nights must be numeric. The email address must match the pattern that's provided, and we should be sure to trim the entries. I think there's actually one more that they didn't mention in here, and that is when you look at this, that better be a date. All right. Now, I think, and we'll see right now, but I believe when they set it up, they meaning the authors, when they set it up, I believe they set it up so that the arrival date was of type text. We could make it of type date, in which case we'd get a drop down. So there's a lot of different ways that this can be done. But let's take a look at what we have here. All right. So again, here's our form. So here's how everything is set up. Again, I've got to take for granted now, unless I hear from one of you, that everything that's in here makes sense by now. All right. And basically, you understand basic form handling. So in other words, we're doing a get here. There really isn't any personal information that I remember. All right. But it'll be put into the query string. All right. And right now, it'll call this response.html, which was that thing that you saw. Thanks for submitting your form. All right. We're giving the form both a name and an ID. And as you can see, both of them have the same name. What you will find next semester when you start working with Node.js is you'll oftentimes do this. In fact, there's going to be a lot less that you're going to be using this and a lot more that you're going to be using this. But when you have them both, you're going to typically give them the same name unless you're working like with a group of radio buttons. And we've looked at that before. So when you're working with a group of something, all right, then the name would be the generic name, and then each radio button would have its own ID, type of an idea. All right, so here's our field set. So everything that's in there for this. So this is the first thing that's in there. All right. So there's the arrival date. Okay. And again, you'll notice we've got names and IDs. All right. Also notice we've got an autofocus here, which means that that field will automatically get the focus when we start to run the program. Also notice that we have in here, because the field is required, we've got something here and here. In other words, we're going to have all these spans. Now, since every single span in here, since the idea behind those spans is they're going to be read, etc., and they're going to give a message, notice what they have done in here, and that is they've called everything just a span. The reason I'm bringing that up is what they're not doing in here is they're not taking each span and giving it its own ID. That's something, again, that we have talked about before. If you remember, back in the BMI program, I had a height error in there and a weight error in there. So if we wanted to do some more work with individual error messages, we may want to take those spans and give them IDs. Now, if I take a look in here at the CSS, there should be something in here for spans. It's just color red. All right. I like to also put a font weight of bold in here. Of course, you don't have to do that. And you can do that if you want to. Either way is fine. All right. All right. So let's come back here. So this is the first one. Again, there's the number of adults. Okay. So the maximum is 4 per room. That's the number of kids. The maximum is 4 per room. Notice the difference too in here. We've got 0 because it's quite possible. I mean, when my wife and I travel, my kids are grown. All right. So we would choose that one. All right. But it's funny too, because there's a lot of hotels that won't allow 4 people in a room, but that doesn't really matter. And then again, look in here. This a little bit before, and I'm mentioning it again. So notice that the name with the radio buttons is the same every time, but the ID is different. We need the name to be the same because that's associating the fact that these 3 radio buttons are part of a radio button group. These 2 radio buttons are part of a radio button group. However, we also need a way to basically to show each one individually as well. So that's why you see that in here. All right, then the checkbox, and then we've got some contact information. All right. There's nothing wrong with this. It's written just fine. Could we, make some changes to it to make it better? Of course we could. All right. Like I said, I would at a minimum come back in here and go to this first field in here and I'd make that a date field, but we're just going to leave it the way that it is. All right. Because we're not asked to change anything in here. So I'm just trying to have us meet our restrictions. Now, what you see in here is not much. That's the reason that it doesn't work. All right. It's 8:37. I think we'll be able to finish this before the break. But the first thing that you see in here is this email pattern. Now it is legal for me to do this. All right. And put the pattern itself on another line. We went over what this meant yesterday. Again, anything that you see in here are all allowable characters. All right. Anything that you see in between those brackets are allowable characters. So again, uppercase letters, lowercase letters, digits, a period, an underscore, a percent sign, a plus sign, or a minus sign. And there can be one or more of these. All right. Then we need an @ sign. Then you can see the same pattern almost. All right. Now we don't have the underscore or the plus sign or the percent sign in there. And we can have one or more of those. All right. Then that's a period. And notice the period's got a special meaning in here. So we need to turn off that special meaning by prefacing that period with a backslash. And after the period, we're going to have only letters. And there has to be 2 or 3 or 4 of them. So this is a delimiter as well. This is the minimum value, and that is the maximum value right there. Okay. All right. So let's just start following what they've asked us to do. Now, if we do, well, I'm going to show you this one more time. I'm going to do a save all. I'm going to come back and I'm going to run this. And you'll notice it does look like my cursor is there. All right. But I don't know if it's just there by accident or if it is there, period. Nope. It looks like it is going there. All right, which means a lot of different things, or could mean a lot of different things. We could have set a tab order, but it doesn't look like they have. We have autofocus right here. That's what's doing that. All right. To do that in JavaScript, all right, to move the focus to the arrival date text box. Now it sounds like a little overkill, but we can do this. $sign. So we're doing this programmatically now. All right. And I'm going to show you the difference in just a second. all right? And again, they're using semicolons. So now it's not going to look any different when I run this. But what I'm going to do here for just a second is I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to go to my index, and I'm going to remove the word autofocus, do a save all, and then I'm going to run this again. And you'll notice that right now, I don't have a cursor in here. All right. And again, like I said, it's not that big a thing, but if I leave this out, but I uncomment this, then notice there's my cursor. All right. So actually what we're doing is like, for lack of better words, it's like the light switch is on, but we're going and turning it on again by having both of these in there. All right. So really only one of them is necessary. All right. At least when you start the program. Okay. So that's the first thing. So we've got that done. And then we're told that when you submit, when you click the submit button, all right, that we want to go and check all this stuff. So perform form validation when submit button is clicked. Okay. So this is the handler that we're going to create. And again, if we take a quick look at this, what do we have? All right, right here, type of submit, and it's submit request. Okay. Now, again, there are different ways that we can do this, such as, and I'm going to show you this right now. The form itself has got a name that's called reservation form. All right. And we can sit and set a submit for the reservation form itself. And that's how I'm going to do it. Quite often, this is how it's done. So like this. So reservation form, from form dot submit. All right. We want that EVT in here. We want that event handler because we may have to keep this from actually submitting. All right. Because we're going to have an is valid in here. Okay. We're going to put that in right here. We're going to assume at the start that everything is hunky-dory, so everything is valid. Then we're going to have to check every field. So we'll check the arrival date, we'll check the number of nights, etc., and we'll iterate our way through this. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is validate the arrival date. Okay. Now, this is the kind of thing that has to start making sense. All right. This may be the reason that they set it up the way they did. I don't know because I didn't write the book, but we're telling with this to the right of the equal sign there, we're telling it to grab the value of anything that was put into that text box. Then we're saying trim it. All right, it's all from the arrival date. Take whatever's left and put it in there. All right. Now, right now, the only thing that we're going to check in here, because the only thing we're told to check, all right, is it empty? And if it's empty, we're going to put in there, this field is required. We're going to be using all over the place in here, this field is required. We're going to be using it all over the place. So you don't have to do this, but I'm going to come up, and since we've got a constant up here, I'm going to make my own constant. I'm going to call it TFIR, and I'm going to set it equal to this field is required. Now, an advantage I get from doing that is I'm sure now that when I print that out, everyone will be the same. Whereas if I was doing it manually and there were 10 or so fields in there, I might sometimes say the field is required, and this field is required, a field, etc. Now I'm sure I'm going to have something that's going to be exactly the same with this TFIR every time. Okay, so if arrival date is equal to nothing, all right, so we trimmed it and now there's nothing in there, okay, then I can just come in and say, that's what is in that asterisk. All right. So this field is required. I don't have to do it now. Remember, it's TFIR, TFIR. There we go. And we know that our is valid must now be set to false. All right, let's see if this one works. So I'm putting nothing in there now. Okay, now it did actually show. It was kind of hard to tell. All right. And the reason that it's doing that right now, I'm going to show you that too, right this second. And that is if we do go in here right now, and I'm going to do a shortcut right now. So I'm going to just come in here and say this. We have to keep this from showing. So I'm going to say EVT dot prevent default. All right. And I'm going to remove that in just a minute, but I wanted to show you that when I do run this now, I'm getting my message. All right. And the reason it went like that is there was no prevent default. So when you submitted the request, it was doing what it's supposed to do naturally. All right. So that's good. That's a good start. And I'm just going to cut that out of here. Now, there is, when we get into later on in the book, we're going to be talking about other things with dates, but they haven't gotten into those yet. So they're only checking for the presence or absence of a date. We should put an else on here. What, why, and what? Well, if we get down to the else, it was a valid date. So we can come over here and basically we can just come in and do this and now say nothing there. All right. So again, if it's a valid date, meaning the else was hit, nothing should happen. So again, if I do a file save all, you're not going to really see it, but it's just going to jump right to the next field. So that's our validation right there for the arrival date. All right. Next, we have to go in and we have to validate the number of nights. So we're doing it very much the same way. Okay. Now, one thing we don't have to really check in here. All right. We don't have to check for, well, again, take a look at it. Right. We actually do have to check and see if it's not numeric. So again, another thing that could have been done in here and really should have been done in the HTML here for the number of nights, that should have been a number field. We could have also come in and done the min and the max. Now, I want to tell you why they didn't do that. You've kind of got your choice when you start doing this. Do you want to go in and, for example, make everything required or not make everything required? And notice here, we don't have that stuff. All right. Because what we're doing is we're transitioning over where we are writing our own code so that we have more control, so that when something fails validation, we're handling it the way we want to handle it, as opposed to letting the system handle it the way they want to handle it. All right. And there's really, and to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with doing it either way. All right. Okay. So I'm going to come in here and say again, if nights equal nothing. All right. So if there's nothing in there, we're again going to do exactly what we did up here, where we said EIFR for this field is required, but I'll change the name there. Right. So this will become nights. All right. So that'll handle nothing in there. Now, since it's just a text box, and since we are expecting it to be numeric, all right, okay, there's another thing we have to check for. So else if is NaN nights. All right. And let's make another thing in here. They just have must be numeric, which is fine. So I'm going to change this to MBN for must be numeric. And we'll add another one of those up here. All right. And then finally, if it's neither one of those, then everything is fine. So else, and again, I'm just going to steal that from when we did it up above to right here, but change it from arrival date to nights. Now I am going to go back, and at the bottom here, I'm just going to put that EVT dot prevent default. And that's always going to prevent it, but just so I can test this. We already did this one, so I'll put a date in here. So I'll just put in today's date, which is 4/6/2023. Now there's nothing in nights. Oh, well, I guess I need to put that event, the default thing someplace else, but it did take it. All right. How do I know that? Well, I'm going to prove it to you right now. And I think that has to go up here. That's probably why it didn't work. So again, 4/6/2023. Now there's nothing in here. All right, so we get this field is required. Must be numeric. And 3. And now there's nothing. All right, so far those are both working. Okay, now think about this. We don't have to validate this. We have no way of knowing if they meant to put in 3 adults and they put in 1. We have no way of knowing that. All right. Same thing with children. So this is all the validation is now done for the general information. All right. So what else is here? Well, do we have to validate anything in here? Since we set these to a default by setting that to checked and setting that to checked, there's no validation that we have to do in here either. All right. So we can skip all the way down to the bottom here. And what we want to do is just check the name and check the email and check the phone. All right. So, again, when we do this, you'll see that we're checking every field with the red asterisk by it. Sometimes too, what you'll see after this, like this, is you'll see this is an H1. You might see an H2 underneath it that has a red asterisk and said with something like these fields are required, just to let the user know. All right, so let's finish this up and then we're taking our break. So we have come in here now and we have validated. We first came in and we validated the arrival date. All right, then we did the number of nights. All right, so next, I want to validate the name. Now, again, notice that they put it in as name. They didn't put it in as first name and last name, just as name. All right. So you can see we're being very deliberate. We're doing all these basically the same way. All right. And in fact, let's see. Um, what we should have also been doing while we're doing this is, okay, we came in here, everything is cool. Okay, the is valid is false, etc. So when we get down after that else statement, we should come in here and do this and say this dot val and then set it to that variable. We're just cleaning it up. We're making sure that now that field has the right value in it. All right, and we can do the same thing down here. We can put our night's value in here. And we don't have to worry about it because it's not going to hurt anything. And what I mean is, if we've already set is valid to false, all right, it's not going to print out anyway. So nights. All right, so let's do the name. So again, if again, we're just going to come in through here rather and do pretty much the same thing we just did. So if name equal nothing, we're going to do the same kind of thing. So and that was this field is required. And again, we're going to set is valid equal to false. All right. Else. We want to make sure that asterisk is gone. All right. So there's our name validation. And finally, we want to say, okay, so that's all of our validation for our name. Then we want to validate the email entry. And remember, when we're validating the email entry, we're going to be using that pattern that you saw up above here, this email pattern. All right, so we're doing regular expression handling in here, albeit fairly simplistic. All right, and then finally, we'll do the phone. All right, so there's our validating the name. We can go back and we can run it again. Just check that. So we've already done this. So we want to put in a valid date here. Notice there's the autocomplete there. All right. And for number of nights, we'll just put in 4, but I'm leaving the name blank. This field is required. All right. But if I do put in a name there, everything's cool. And the asterisk is gone. All right. So again, so far at least, everything is working. So we've got 2 more fields that we have to validate here. All right. So validate the email address. And you'll notice, whoops, that again, even though we may have set the is valid before, we keep setting it every time. And it's really an important concept just because of the fact you have absolutely no idea the order in which somebody is going to fill out this form. All right. And it's just to be as a safety measure, they're all erroneous when this stuff happens. All right. So if we get down to here, something was entered into the email. We don't know yet what it was. We don't particularly care right now what it was, except that we have to test it. So rather than just an else there, we'll say else if. So now we're testing the email against that pattern. And if it comes back false, all right, we'll add one more thing up here. So we had must be a valid number. All right, and we'll make that must be a valid email. All right, we might as well add, well, I don't know if we're going to have one for the phone or not. We'll just leave it like that for now. All right, so if this test fails, right here, we're validating the email. So again, we're going to want to come in here and do this. All right. And must be valid email. And again, is valid is equal to false. All right. Finally, if we get down to this point, it passed the test. So we can just put in an else here. Okay. And we want to do two things. Well, really one thing. We want to just set this equal to nothing. All right. And again, we want to come in then and say email dot val to email. All right. And then we can test that. All right. We'll put in a name now, but we'll leave the email blank. This field is required, and we'll put in something nonsensical. Must be valid email address. Okay. So far it looks as though everything in here is working. We're just about finished. Sorry, we're running over a little later than we normally do, but let's come in and do that last validation. So let's validate the phone number. All right. And after we get done with that, all we have to check is if is valid is true or false. So $sign there. Right. So again, if it equals nothing, what did I do over here before? Yep. So if there's nothing in there, we're going to say for the phone. All right. Basically, again, that's all we have to check. So else. So there's nothing in there. So that's validated the phone. All right. So we don't want to do this prevent default here unless our valid was set to false. So if not, is valid. Remember, that is a shortcut. By now, again, that should be making sense to all of you. That's a shortcut. That's the same thing as saying if is valid equal false. They're the same thing. So again, if that is the case, then we do want to do this prevent default. All right. And that should be everything. So let's give it one last check and then we're taking our break. So if I put in something for everything here, all right. One thing we didn't check, I guess, let's just put Jeff in there. All right, and jpscott@rankin.edu. Let's check for no phone. This field is required. Good. 314-286-3675. Now everything is filled out and everything is valid. So that worked. And now if I do leave everything that's supposed to be validated blank, as we did when we started, all right, we get our 5 fields that we're validating. They all get their message. All right. And again, with this one, if we put in garbage, we get the must be numeric. In this one, if we put in this, we get the must be a valid email address. To my knowledge, at least, we've now tested everything. All right. So any questions on that one, Grant?
No, I think I've got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So it is 9:06. Let's just take 10. We'll come back at 9. In fact, let's take 11. It's almost 9:07. Come back at 9:17 and we're going to go over chapter 11. And after we do, we'll look at one of the exercises for chapter 11. So I'll see you at 9:17. All right, it is 9:17, so I'm going to start back up. Chapter 11, which is our last chapter in this section on jQuery, is on how to use jQuery plugins and UI widgets. Now, maybe it's just me, but I find this interesting. You can go out to a site that's called plugins.jquery.com. And if I count it over here, 500, there's about 1,000, 1,300, 1,600, maybe 2,100, 2,200, 2,300, 2,400. There's close to between 2,000 and 3,000 built-in plugins right here. But if you look at the message, it says we recommend moving to npm using jQuery plugin as the keyword in your package.json. I don't expect that to make any sense. But again, those of you who next semester will be taking the AWD1111 class, which is the database-driven website development class, just so you see this, all right, I'm just giving you a prelude to it, but I'm going to go out to npmjs.com. All right, very ugly website, but it's actually, NPM is the node package manager. And what you have in here are basically the equivalent of plugins that we'll talk about in this chapter. And the last time I looked, there's about 500,000 of them in here. So there's plugins to do anything you can think of doing. In addition, if you come up with something that's not in there, you can submit a plugin to here. And if they want it, they put it into their library. So it's something you'll learn more about next semester. All right, let me get rid of this stuff from earlier. We also are going to look again at the jQuery UI, or the jQuery user interface. All right, we're going to look at that in just a couple minutes. But with that said, I can just close this. And we're going to start going through chapter 11. Not a particularly long chapter. Again, about 25 pages or so. So it says one easy way to add common features like accordions, tabs, etc. is to use jQuery plugins and jQuery UI widgets. This chapter shows how to do that. So they start by talking about plugins and what they are, just for a couple pages. A difference in how to use. That's about the first half of the chapter. Then they go into the jQuery UI. And I'm not going to disagree with what they say in that section, but I'm going to recommend that you don't do it that way. All right. And what I mean is, I'm going to show you probably an easier way of working with it that they sort of mentioned in the chapter. Finally, we talk about how to use 5 jQuery UI widgets. All right. So taking it from the top, or trying to, if I can get this thing to change pages. And it's not, so let's see if I can do that. Bring it up again. There we go. All right. Notice right at the top of the page here, a jQuery plugin is just a jQuery application that's basically set to do one task, or maybe even a group of tasks. As it says, it makes use of the jQuery library, and most plugins can be used with a limited knowledge of JavaScript and jQuery. So in other words, if you go in to use a jQuery plugin, to know internally how it works. You just have to know how to call it. All right. And there's all sorts of words and verbiage and stuff that you can use for this stuff. All right. But really what happens is, and I've given this example before, so pardon me if you've seen it already, but if I come out to the calculator and I type in a number, 841, and I hit no, that's the wrong one. If I put in 841 and I do whatever the heck one now is for square root, I don't even know anymore. Okay, 29. Let's say that's it. I don't know if it is or not. But the point is this. All right. I don't know how that happened. I don't know physically how I put in a number, hit a button, and it gave me an answer. What I see right here is the interface. This is my interface. What happens behind the scenes to make this work the way that it works is what's known as the implementation. And the reason I'm bringing this up is you have to be able to understand to be able to use these plugins what their interface is like. Sometimes they will require that you provide parameters to them. Sometimes they won't. So you have to know how to call it. You don't necessarily have to know how it works. All right. And they mention here that you can go out to the plugin registry, which we already did. You can Google something, and they recommend that you put the word jQuery in front of it because there's plugins in virtually any kind of language that you might use. So here, for example, they put in jQuery rotator plugin, and you can see what you get. All right. Here are some websites, including that plugin registry that we just looked at. GitHub is a great resource. As it says, they've got a lot of plugins out there. Then they give you some, maybe you've seen this before, this Lightbox, maybe you haven't. All right. But I know that I created a website a couple of years ago for a woman who basically shelters animals, and she wanted a page that had about 30 images of different animals on it. So I put them in as a little bigger than a thumbnail, but basically smaller pictures, almost like thumbnails. And if you clicked on any one of those, it brought it up on a screen and it showed it basically the whole screen. And that's a lightbox type of effect. And there's other things that are in here as well, and they show some other ones. This is the one I'd say, I'm not going to make you use this. I went back and rewatched the video that I told you about with this jQuery validation. And I just thought with what they show you in here in the book, it's probably a little more advanced because it takes a lot of work to get this stuff to work correctly. But I will tell you that it is worth your time to take a look at that 11-minute long video that's on that website right there. So as it says again, they're JavaScript applications that extend the functionality of jQuery. They require the use of the core jQuery library. There are thousands of them available. All right. Some of the websites were shown above. It says, in general, if you can find a plugin for what you want to do, it's better than writing it yourself. You'll save time, you'll save effort. Plus, if it's out there already, like on the jQuery plugin registry, it's been tested up the wazoo by different people. All right. So they come in here, and I'm going to just come right to here, and they give you a 6-step process. All right, for using a plugin. The bad thing is what most people want to do is they want to download it and use it. They don't even, somebody told me this was really cool, etc. But notice what number 1 says. Study the documentation for the plugin. You should know what it is before you bring it into your program. All right. Number 2, notice that it's possible you don't have to bring in any files whatsoever. The plugin files may be available via a CDN. So all you'll have to do is add the links in there to be able to actually use them. All right. Now, on the other hand, if when we get to the jQuery UI in a few minutes, if you want to use that, you want to download the whole thing, a lot of times there's a lot of stuff you have to download. We'll get to that in just a minute. All right. Then, as it says in the head element, what may happen is with certain plugins, with many of them, they will require you to add in another CSS file. All right. And as it says at the end of the body element, they may ask that you code in extra JavaScript files. These should come after the main jQuery one, etc. And they show that right here. So here we're adding jQuery, the minified version, and then we're adding the BX slider. So that what this is bringing in, all right, a jQuery plugins, which again should come after loading jQuery itself. All right. 4, if the download includes an images folder. And a lot of times, why would you care an images folder? Well, sometimes if a plugin is going to take a few seconds, there might be images that, like that ask you to wait. There are images like that, where you have like a ticking clock or whatever. All right. Number 5, code the HTML and CSS for the page. And number 6, if necessary, if you have to call something from there, all right, write the JavaScript rather, and jQuery code to do that. All right. So this is kind of neat because you're bringing this in and this is all you have to do to use it. All right. Now in that case with the BX slider, so they give you a couple cautions on the bottom of the page here. And first it says, make sure to include a script element for jQuery before. I already mentioned that. And finally, and this is kind of weird, but some plugins won't work with the latest version of jQuery. As it says, if you have problems with a plugin, look at its documentation. You would think it'd be the other way. All right. But some of the plugins are older. Some of the tried and true ones are older. And there may be things in newer versions of jQuery that makes them break if the plugin has not been updated. So what do? You either go down and use an earlier version of jQuery, or you don't use that plugin, or you go out to the documentation and maybe they've got a fix out there. All right, again, some plugins may be accessed via a CDN, others must be downloaded and then stored. All right, so the next thing they do in here is they talk about 3 popular plugins. The first one is Lightbox, which I already mentioned. So this would be a thumbnail to begin with. You click on it and then you can see what would happen in here. All right. Now, I've used this before, but again, I understand the interface, but I've never looked at the implementation to be able to do it. All right. But as they mention here, it can be used to display larger images of thumbnails. Okay. And you can see the light box starts when the user clicks on one of the thumbnail images. I'm not going to sit and read this to you. All right. And I'm not going to say much about any of these. All right. There's the BX slider. And what does that do? Well, notice what it does here. Okay. You've got dots in here, so you go from one to the other. You've got this, you can go to the end, etc. So basically, it's set up so that you can work with a carousel. It's kind of an enhanced or enriched carousel, for lack of better words. It says it makes it easy pretty much to develop your own carousel and set it up the way in which you would like it to be set up. There's another one, as it says, for slideshows, which is really basically a carousel, cycle 2. So these are just some of the ones that you can use. Now, there is an exercise at the end of the chapter that asks you to do this. I'm not going to do it with you. I'm not even going to assign it. All right. It just because of the fact, if you want to take a look at it, take a look at it. But we're going to look at a couple of these that are going to require you to put in a bit of code, and look at 1 or 2 that'll require you to put in almost no code whatsoever. All right. So the next thing that's discussed is the jQuery UI. Now, I know I said this the other day, but again, remember when I gave the lecture the other day, for whatever reason, all right, halfway into it, I lost, or I was dropped from the system. So when you come in here, the one thing I just want to mention is this effects, because I showed the easing, and I showed that the other day, and there were these 3. But if you come in here and you click the hide demo, there are about 10 other demos in here. So if you want to see this, for example, pulsate, and you want to see how that works, maybe that's really ugly for you, but you get the idea. And then you can come down here, view the source, and boom. What you're going to find most of the time, this is actually fairly big, all right, because all of the jQuery is right in here. But a lot of times when you use a lot of this stuff, for instance, accordion, all right, just to be able to do this right here, what is it? Well, if I view the source, all of it is right there. All right. You've got an ID you called accordion, which is right there. That's the div with everything in it. And you just tell it to run the accordion method. Some of them literally are that easy. Others require quite a bit of stuff and quite a bit of work. All right. Did that, but let's go back. Okay, so again, to get started with the jQuery UI, as it says, the next few figures describe what it is, where to get it, how to download it. When you download it, okay, and there is a download over here someplace, I don't remember where it is. All right, you get everything. So there's like 29 things in here, and you get everything. But when you download this, it also asks, because when you download it, you don't have to download everything. There's the download. All right. So what you can do is you can uncheck anything you don't want. So if I only want a half dozen things in here, then I would have to take the other 20 some and uncheck them. All right. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you're not going to use it, this is significantly going to make the size smaller by removing everything, of course, that you don't need. All right. And again, that's just under download right there. So they define this as being a free open source JavaScript library that extends the use of jQuery more than anything else. That's it. All right. So it says the figure summarizes 4 types of features that the UI provides. So in other words, when we look at this, back up one, we've got interactions, we've got widgets, we've got effects, and we've got utilities. Okay. And as they say in here, effects we've kind of been using already. All right. And with some of the other stuff that's in here, all right, it says widgets are controls like accordions, tabs, etc. Themes provide for the formatting of widgets. And notice they're implemented as a style sheet. All right. It says this book doesn't show how to use them. All right. But you can if you want. All right. And not only that, they even have, if you go into themes, they have what's called a theme roller, where you can create your own custom theme that basically it'll write a lot of the CSS for you. So there's some cool stuff in here. All right. So as far as how to download it, they go through the steps in here, and there's nothing with it. I just mentioned to you. Again, from the home page, click the download link. We just looked at that. Select or deselect. So if you want everything, just do a download. Otherwise, deselect what you don't want. If you want to select the theme for a download, as they say, use the drop-down list. All right. After you've got everything selected, click the download button, and that's basically replicated right here. All right. So as far as how to use any one of these widgets, I'm not at all disagreeing with what the author said. I want you to know this. But sometimes all you need when you come in here is, hey, I need to make an accordion. All right. So you basically just grab all of this, but be real leery when you do, because sometimes what they'll put in here is something like this. It's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I bump that size up. So it's got href equals / code. Sometimes that won't work in your program. You might have to change that to HTTPS : etc. All right, just so you know that. All right. But if I have to use a quick accordion, I'm going to make a div. I'm going to put in my stuff like this, and then I'm just going to grab this. All right. And make it work. So again, if I, just to show you this, if I come in here, oops, I guess that's too much. Try it again. Come on, Jeff. If I go back to accordion and I go in here, I go to view source. All right. And I just grab everything that's in here. 70 lines worth, it looks like. And I'm going to come in, and inside of here, file, new file. In fact, let's do this. We'll just do it right from the desktop. Okay, and paste that in. All right, you can see it. That's all I've done is just a quick copy and paste. Again, I am going to change these. This one may screw up, I don't know. Right? Sometimes, like I said, I've had it work without changing those. Sometimes it's been a pain in the butt to get it to work. Oops, well, when did I get that? Because that's what's up in here right now. So let's see. It's because this isn't in a folder. That's why I think it's screwing up trying to run that in here. So demo. Come on, you. Come on. Demo. It won't let me move it in, but we'll try it anywhere. I'll just copy it into there. There it is. So again, you can see I made an accordion, and it didn't really take any work on my part to do that. There is a little work because by default, once you open one is open all the time. All right, so there's a little bit of more code you have to add to set it up so it's not like that. All right, but you can see how simple that is to basically add things. All right, so as they say, to use the jQuery UI, all right, you code the HTML in the jQuery and you just bring in what it is you need. Then they go through, much better example than I just gave probably, but they go through that accordion. All right. And if we grab this right here, I'm not going to because it doesn't work well. All right. But all I put in was that first line. Okay. That collapsible, etc. We'd probably want to put in all of that stuff. All right. The tabs widget, we're going to look at that in just a minute. In fact, what we're going to look at, we're going to quickly look at the chapter 11 version of that reservation we did. And it puts, there's three sections, if you remember. There was a general information, a room information, and then whatever it was, personal or whatever. We're going to have each one of those in its own tab. So we'll look at that in just a moment. Notice how easy it is then to use tabs. All right. And they give you a couple more, the button and the dialogue. If you've never heard this term before, this right here is a dialogue box. To be able to go on, in order for you to be able to go on in here, you must close this by clicking the X. Okay. All right. Sorry, looks like the internet dropped and hopefully it came back again. So again, this is modal, meaning you have to click that X. All right. You're kind of stuck there until you do. All right. And finally, they show the date picker, which we did not look at before with that arrival date. All right. And there's other ways that you can use the date picker as well without even using it with a jQuery thing. Now, I went over that fast and I realized I did. I don't want to put much on here as far as what you will have to do in chapter 11, but I am going to bring up a couple of these programs and we're going to take a quick look at them. All right. So let me close this. All right. Grant, I take it for granted you're still there, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Sorry, like I said, you may or may not even know it, but a couple times my internet connection dropped. So, all right. So in chapter 11 here, we will start by looking at this FAQ application that right now looks like this. Not much, and we're going to take it and change it around by adding just a little bit of code. And when I say a little bit, I mean literally about 10 lines. All right. So let's go in and do that. So let's come in here and go into what we have here. Let's see, what do we have here? It says, program. Do I want to reload it? Yes. Okay. So right now, the code, let me bring the whole thing up the way I should. There we go. Right now, the code that's in there looks like this. It works, and there's not a problem with it. So we've got this H2 and the click and all this, and it's great. There's absolutely not a problem with it. All right. But what we're going to want to do is two things. First of all, I'm going to take everything that's in here and I'm going to comment it out. All this, every bit of that. So basically now all we've got is the use strict. In fact, we do want our document ready. I'm sorry. So right there. All right. And I'm going to replace all of that you see in there with like 2 or 3 lines of code. Now, if I run it right now, it's not going to do much of anything. All right. And the reason that it's not going to do much of anything is that we do have to go back in here and we have to see. Let's go ahead and do this. So if we come in here, notice we've got this FAQ.CSS. All right. Then also notice we've got this where we're bringing in the jQuery UI. Now I would have put that one in first before my own, but they've got it this way. So I'm going to leave it this way. All right. And then down at the bottom, get rid of this. Notice they also have, there's our jQuery. There is the jQuery UI. Now with this ... I don't know if that's going to work or not. All right, that is assuming we have that loaded already into our system. The facts.js is the one that we just were working with. That's this one. So let me do a file save all on this. And then let's look in here. All right, it does not look as though the jQuery UI has been loaded in here. All right, so I'm going to try something and we'll see if it works. That is, I'm going to go out to our friend here, cdnjs.com, and I'm going to put in here jQuery UI. Oops, jQuery UI. And there it is. All right, and I'm going to grab that and I'm going to put that in place of what the author had in there. Now, what the author had in there may very well work. I don't know. But I'm going to grab that one with that script equals source. I'm going to remove that entire line there, and I'm going to replace it with my own line right here. All right. We could do the same thing if we wanted to with a jQuery line in here. I don't think we have to do that. Let's see if it works. Well, unlike something. Refuse to apply style because the MIME type is not supported in my index HTML line 13. All right. So it doesn't like something. It's, look. That's index HTML ID equal facts. I don't think that's what the error is in. I still think it's might be right here. So let's see if that's what the error is. If the error is there, it may not be finding it until right here. So let's see if we can find the jQuery UI min.css. All right, so I'm going to go back to cdnjs.com where we just were, and I'm going to put in that jQuery, etc. Let's see. That's the UI. I'm going to do it like this. CDN for jQuery UI.min.css. See if there is if there is one for it or not. All right. Version link. I don't like the way that looks. This is on Microsoft's, and it's got the JS. I don't see the CSS in here. jQuery UI. I don't know if that'll work or not, but we'll try that just to see. So href equal, I'm going to get rid of all that. Place it with that. Again, it still might not work, but we'll see. Okay, well, you can see it's black tie. All right, this isn't great. I understand that, but hopefully you get the idea. And what I'm just trying to get across to you right here is this, and that is, that's all the actual JavaScript or jQuery code we had to put in there. And that was spelled incorrectly, so let's see if that changes anything. All right, so I'm not going to require that you do that one. I don't really care. All right, so we'll take a look at what assignments I want you to work on in just a couple of minutes. Let's go in and take a look at then. So from here, in fact, let's do it now. All right, I'm not going to make you modify this carousel application. You don't have to do that one. This replace a tabs widget with an accordion, it's pretty much what we just did. You can try that one, feel free to. If you don't want to turn that in, that's okay as well. We're going to do this one in just a second. All right, that one I do want you to try to turn in. So 11.3. And on the other listing, let's convert, and maybe that's the one we just did, convert a fax FAQ app to an accordion widget. All right, again, you don't have to do that one. We'll do this one too. Create a progress bar widget that uses a timer. So the only two that I'm going to require that you turn in for chapter 11, I'll say this again in the email, are going to be this short 11.2, create a progress bar widget that uses a timer, and extra 11.3, use widgets in a form. And again, I will repeat that in the email today. All right, so let's bring those two up. Now it's 9:50. I'll go till 10:15 and we'll take a break and we'll see where we are at that time. So let's see. This is the reservation. If we look at it right now, all right, that isn't what we want. All right, that's how it looks, but that's not what we want. So if I can't get any of this to work, if I have to, I'll just say, pardon my French, but screw it. I won't have you turn in anything for chapter 11. That's not really that big of a concern for me. All right. I'm really leaning towards right now not putting anything on your test as far as jQuery plugins. And I think that if I don't think there's going to be one person who's going to complain about it. All right. So let's take a look at this reservation one that's in here. Let's bring this up and bring it up in code. All right. What was that? There we go. So again, if everything works right now, I believe this is all they're showing right now is this thank you for your support thing. All right. And as far as our index file that's in here, again, ideally at least, all the stuff that's in here is just going to make sense to people. All right, so let's take a quick look at what's in here. There we go. All right. So what do we have? Let's see. All right. Okay, I'm looking in here to see if I had to change anything. Nothing in here that I noticed. But we do have to add the UI. All right. I think, did we have that? Let me look here. Okay, so we have that in here already. All right. All right, if you see this, there's the jQuery UI min.css. So the authors have provided that for us, is what I'm saying. So let's come in here and we're going to put in another link line. All right, so the href is equal to jQuery right there, this whole path. In there, this file right here, the CSS file. Okay, so I just used the one that was already in there is what I'm saying. All right, then we've got our reservation request. All right, right now, there are no tabs in here. Saying this again, right now, there are no tabs in here. We've got field sets. We've got 3 different field sets, and basically what we want to do is we want to go in and convert these field sets into tabs. All right, I don't think I have to say that again. Hopefully that all makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take everything that's in here. I'm not going to remove anything because I'm probably going to be able to do a lot of copy and paste in here. But I'm going to take everything that's currently in here. All right. And I'm going to comment it out using HTML comments. All the way down to the very bottom where we end that field set. All right, so I still have the form tags, and that's it in here right now. Okay, so, and again, this can be done in a bunch of ways. I tried to follow what they did in the book. Now, if you remember, what we want in here is we want this. We want this to change into 3 tabs. So when we click the general information, we're going to get just these 4 things. The preferences are going to be our room things, and the contact information will be the name, the email, and the phone. So we're setting up each one of these as their own individual tab. Now, if you go in for right now and you look at the JavaScript, there's a lot of JavaScript in there, but we'll have to make some changes for this to work the way that we want it to work. All right, so this is unlike many of the ones that we've done before. In this example, we're not only changing the JavaScript, but we're coming in and we're changing the HTML as well. So we've got a tabs 1, a tabs 2, and a tabs 3. In number 1, we've got the general information. In number 2, we've got the preferences. And in number 3, we've got the contact information. All right. If we look at it right now, it's not going to look like much. There you go. And if we click here and here and here, it's not doing anything yet. All right. Because we told it to go to tabs 1, tabs, etc. We haven't written those. Okay. But just to show you, because that's what I like to do is write a little bit and then show you what we've done. So we're still inside of this form. We've got our big div, and now we're going to write tab 1. So there's our arrival date. Remember what we have in here. Next, we have the number of nights. And I know I could copy, but I'm more comfortable doing it like this. So our options in here are 4. Okay, let's copy this down and we'll do that for the children as well. All right, so that's tab number 1. Okay, doesn't look too bad. It hasn't been formatted yet or anything, but I'm just saying as far as how it's set up, it doesn't look too bad. And then we need number 2. So we want to make sure we are outside of the div for tab 1. Right. So then we need our div for tab 2. And again, that had room type and bed type. This is the CSS class they put in there. Okay. All right. Checked only on the first one. And these should say standard and business and suite. And that's radio, room, but this class here is ID is standard, ID is business, and the ID is suite. Okay. Let's just copy these to bring in the other one. Bed type. And there's only 2 of them. Get that last one out of here. And this also had in here the checkbox for smoking. All right, there's that one. So let's check that out. Looks okay. And then we'll put in the last one. And again, that's got 3 fields in it, which are the name, the email, and the phone. Copy this 3 times. Put it in there 3 times. All right. Now I can remove almost all of this stuff now. So let's see. Email and phone. All right. We're going to leave this stuff in there. This is that, whoops, this is the field set stuff. This is new stuff. Let me get rid of that. All right, that's got that cancellation policy in it. All right, so in here, we want this. All right, we also need to bring in that jQuery, this right here, this custom thing. And we need to add in there the JS file. We want to make sure we put that after our jQuery. Okay, so file, save all. It's going to look pretty ugly right now. We haven't incorporated the tab, so it looks very similar to what we'd already done. I got to fix that, and we'll do that in a second. All right. But as far as I can tell, at least, it looks okay. See, like I said, these still are not working. Okay. Let's get rid of that thing at the bottom, wherever that is. That's here. Okay. So next, let's go in and write the JavaScript for this. All right. And let's see. All right, so I've got it right here. All right, we've got a lot of this in there already. Our email pattern is set up. Okay, but the first thing that we want to do is we want to come in here in our document.ready after our email pattern, and we want to put in the code to actually implement the tabs widget. All right. Right. And that literally is all we need to do to implement that part of it. Okay. So let's see, what else do we have in here? There's a lot of junk in here. So again, what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to comment this out. And either I'll just rewrite everything, or if we in comments, bring some other stuff in, we'll do that. Right, don't worry, this will all flush its way out in just a moment. Okay, so code to implement the tabs. Okay, to do that, we want to take the arrival date. And we want to tell it to use the date picker. And the min date is today, so we can just say new date. And the max date that we're going to allow you to arrive is 90 days from today. Okay, Now, if that doesn't make sense, please say something. So again, we're trying to take this arrival date and change it into a date picker. All right. And then what it should show for the start date in there is today's date. And what it should go to is 3 months basically. So approximately August 6th. All right. If we did that correctly. All right. We also want to set up a click event for the policies because that'll display the hotel's policies. Did it again. All right, so for the click event, we will write a, good golly. We're going to come in and write an arrow function. And we'll put that in as a dialog. So you can see we've added our third different widget in here. All right, the tabs widget, the date picker widget, and this will be the dialog or dialog box, whatever you want to call it. And we're telling it that it's modal. All right. Now, I'm looking in here and it's, first of all, that's modal, not model. And second of all, I think, I'm trying to remember if I actually need this in here, modal true. I don't need one here, but I will put one here. All right. Now I'm looking at all this junk that's in here now, and it's giving me errors on all this. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to move that down to here. All right. I have no idea because I've removed and added so much stuff if this is going to work, but I'm going to just take a look at what I've got. So that's not working. All right. All righty. Okay. Now we need the handler. All right. And that's basically checking everything that we wanted to do. All right. Now, what I'm going to do, shouldn't do it this way, but I am going to anyway. And that is, I'm going to remove everything that's in here. I'm going to go out to my working version and I'm going to put it in and then we'll talk about that. All right. And now we can see if I screwed it up or not. And I did. think I screwed this up a second ago, so I want to fix it now. All right, it's better. Now, notice the general information is now in its own tab. The preferences are now in their own tab. The contact information is now in its own tab. All right. I can view the cancellation policies and it's in a modal dialog. If I click submit request right now, I'm on this one. All right. So notice I get all that. For the nights, if I do change it to a number, I'm fine. If I click on here, I now get the date picker. All right, it starts with today's date. And if I keep going, see how it stops? 90 days from today. All right, so now I can come in here if I want to do it this weekend. There you go. The adults and the children are fine. Let's see, we have 2 adults and 1 child. I'm making this up. All right. And now if I submit the request, everything is cool. The preferences are all set. I don't want a smoking. In the contact information, again, I'll just put in me and Rankin. Or I don't know if it'll take it like this or if it wants it formatted. Let's see. There, that's it. All right, what I will do is I'm going to include, because I think this one is important. So I'm going to working version in here. I'm going to include a working version. I will send this out to you this morning after we get done. I'm not going to require that you do any homework from chapter 11. So all the homework I'll have you do will be in 8, 9, and 10. And I don't plan on giving you on your test either. All right, I'd still want you to do the written test for chapter 11. You do not have to do the homework or the labs for chapter 11, and then the test will just be on 8, 9, and 10. All right, I'm just going to stop it right there. Questions, Grant?
No, not right now.
No?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, that's all that I had for today. I hope you all have a nice Easter holiday and enjoy your 3-day weekend. I will see you Monday. All right, and when I do, all I'm going to do is spend going over the pretest instructions. Then I will do the pretest for you from scratch on Tuesday. No, say that again, because I said we lose a lab day tomorrow. Monday will be lab, but I will also make sure that on Monday I have sent you the pretest by then. All right. And Tuesday, I will give you time to go over the pretest. Wednesday, I will do the pretest for you. Thursday will be the actual hands-on test. All right. Have a good holiday. Talk to you next week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.